the more you put yourself out there, it's statistics. Now that you're in front of 1,000, 10,000, you're going to get one or two people that are loud, talking negatively, and that could affect confidence. It could instill self-doubt. So I feel like a big part of that mindset around selling yourself is so important. And I'd love to hear about your experience about what habits we've already talked, have a great product for sure. What are other things you think about to ensure that you continuously have that positive mindset, that giving mindset when you're selling?
Well, let's talk about the chirpers in the comments like you talked about. There's always chirpers. I don't get in the pew like I should. My parents put me in the pew so many times as a kid. I hope I've done my due there. But there's a wonderful story in the New Testament about this, and it's called the parable of the sower. And it says a sower went out to sow the seeds, and he's sowing the seeds. He's throwing them out there. And every seed was good. Every single seed. I crack open an apple, that seed's good. I mean, there's very few mutations to where it wouldn't grow. Most of the time, it's the ground. And when the sower sowed these seeds, some of it landed on stony ground. The birds ate it because the ground was too hard. Some was in shallow ground where it couldn't get root, and the sun withered it because they have a root system. Others were choked out by weeds. It was weedy ground. And when you have a book like Think and Grow Rich, and you go to Think and Grow Rich on Amazon, you look at the reviews, it's going to have 4.5 stars, not 5. Now, if I look at the people who don't like Think and Grow Rich, that really doesn't tell me much about the book, but it tells me about the ground. It tells me about the ground they were in. So when I see a person's review, I often realize it's negative. If everyone else is positive, like 90% are positive, and I see one or two reviews that are negative, I'm certainly going to listen to those reviews for feedback, but I'm also going to realize, is this really about the seed that I offered or about the ground that it landed upon? And you'll find there are people in this world that are so wired in such a way that if it isn't something for nothing, if it isn't everything for free in their life, if it isn't, there's a something for nothing wiring to some people. They want to live in the Garden of Eden. They want a fantasy land. And so the way I deal with those comments is I ask myself, what ground did my seed hit? Because it seems like this seed is growing pretty darn well about 93% of the time out of here. Maybe it's just the ground that some people, you get a bad review on a book called Think and Grow Rich. Maybe it's that person really didn't give the book the proper attitude possibly, right? So that's kind of how I deal with that stuff. Is I'm a sower of seeds as a salesman, and I've got great seeds, and I'm going to sow them and spread them around. And if it falls on ground, then what it is, it's my job, like Robert Cialdini was on my podcast, who wrote Persuasion, and he's master. And he and I talked about this, that cultivation is really important. That if I see someone that doesn't take the seed I offered, I blame myself a little bit, and I say, could I have done better to cultivate that person and help that ground open and change their wiring from negative to positive and turn their attitude from selfish to unselfish? Could I do some things to inspire, not just sell? Those are the ways I approach some of that stuff.
Using this analogy, it makes me feel like sales is about, planting the seeds, hoping that they grow. Marketing is about putting out fertilizer to as much as you can so that there's even more possibility for that ground to be fertile.
Couldn't agree more.
Do you find yourself having some sort of balance around how much you want to, say, fertilize the existing soil versus, if it is soil that's not super fertile, to try to break that down into better soil? Like, do you spend more time on the existing positive audience? And that kind of talks about target market versus trying to open the bridge for the people that are on the fringes, and they're a little more difficult to work with, but you also kind of really want to help them because they need it.
I'm probably not a good person to listen to with people on the fringe, because I'll give people about that much of my time. And if I start that first little cultivation, I feel like it's concrete, I'm wasting my time and I'm damaging my tools, and there's other better ground to till, so I don't waste my time. Sales is about what we call positioning. And there's this thing called posture. And so let's say that you had a life preserver and someone was drowning. You have a position to help them, and they're in a position to be helped. And I always want to be Superman. I always want to be the person that's helping. I never want to be the person that's begging. So if someone dangles their cash in front of me, that's the wrong way. I need to be dangling my solutions in front of them. So I don't spend much time with people on the fringe. Now, if I love the person, I'll cultivate. And this is an interesting thing. It's kind of a secret society, but I've been known to give to select groups once a year. I'll come in, I'll do a seminar on sales. I'll do a 2-day, and I'll do this, and people come in. It's kind of my secret little human trick or whatever, and I'll share with them how I built my company and what's been beneficial. And I remember I was talking about preparing people, this thing called persuasion or framing, where you bring someone in a context. So I'll give you an example of what framing would be, is putting someone in a context where they'd be more accepting of a message. I had a friend of mine, and his son was 16 and started driving, had a girlfriend. They're out driving late at night. One day he comes home from school. This is such a great story that my friend told me. And he said, the kid comes in, he says, "Hey, Mom, I don't know how to tell you this, so I'm just going to tell you. Julie's pregnant, she's expecting, and I'm the father." And there was a long silent pause. And then he said, "Mom, actually, no, but I did get a speeding ticket today." Now that's called framing. To where if he would have come out and said, "Mom, I got a speeding ticket," it would have been bad news. But he created a psychological frame. He tilled that ground and fertilized it to where that seed would be accepted with glee. And they rejoiced over the speeding ticket. So that type of so I'm teaching this. And some guy in the workshop says, "Do you use this stuff on your wife?" And immediately I knew what the condition of his marriage was. And I said, "I think you need to understand something. My wife and kids, I sell them all the time. And my wife she kind of knows my little strategies. Sales has strategies. It's okay to use them if you have a good heart." And I said, my wife, as soon as I'll start going into a spiel, she says yes immediately. Not because of the spiel, but because she knows that as soon as I go into that, I'm trying to serve her in some way, and she knows it. Why would I want to convince my wife to do something that I wanted that she didn't? That would not be selling with love. So while I don't spend a lot of time with people on the fringes, if it's someone close to me and I think they would really benefit from a change in mindset, if my son is going to go shoot a foul shot and the other team ices him and he comes in the huddle, I'll use every type of sales strategy I know to build his confidence to hit that foul shot. And when it comes down to selling with love, maybe I'll share this little story. I asked my group, I said, "What's Superman's greatest superpower?" And they said, X-ray vision or faster locomotive or flying or whatever. I go, "Superman's greatest superpower is his heart. Because if he didn't have a good heart, he'd be a supervillain, not a superhero." And that's what selling with love is it's Superman's heart that is his great. I got a little goosebump on that. It's Superman's heart that allows him to sell with love and do things with love. Otherwise, he'd be a supervillain. Well, the same might be true if a guy has the gift of gab and the guy understands NLP and all the psychological manipulations that some people get into. Doesn't really matter if the heart's not there. They're not selling with love and service. So the heart is the big one.
Thank you so much for listening to the Selling with Love podcast. We have some previous episodes you can tune into right here. And if you prefer the short form content where you get to the point in under 10 minutes, we do have a ton of clips from our best episodes that are being shared on this channel as well. So pick which one supports you the most. And of course, thank you for liking, subscribing, and of course, selling with love.